once CGM came in, for the first time, we had front row seats to our metabolism. We were actually able to see how our blood glucose behaved over 24 hours, day after day, how insulin interacted with our blood glucose, how illness interacted with our blood glucose, how food interacted with our blood glucose, exercise, and it really, really changed, our ability to look after ourselves better. I dare say that for the first time, it was very realistic for all of us, people with diabetes, to aspire to have near normal blood glucose values, which was definitely not the case, prior to CGM. So it's really, really, exciting that CGM has come about. But with CGM came, the whole lot of graphs and data points and all of that to analyze. And it continues to be, things that kind of stop people from completely accessing it and let CGM work for them 100%. So the reason why we're here today and the reason why we're doing this workshop is maybe to do our little bit to share our knowledge with the community, and maybe together traverse that path where we can come one step closer to understanding CGMs better, understanding our graphs better, and let this work for us. So I think the rest Mihir will tell you over the next hour, but let me quickly tell you about who we are and what are we doing here today. So we are the Type 1 Diabetes Foundation of India. That's T1DF India for you guys. What are we? Are we another support group? Are we another channel? Are we another platform? No, we're not a support group. We're a group, a platform put together by T1s and put together by other support groups. And we came together to build a pan-India organization, a platform, a charitable trust, if you will. So we're driven by T1s. Everybody in the foundation is a person living with type 1 diabetes. We're techies, we're entrepreneurs, we're lawyers, we're counselors, we're even healthcare workers. And the whole point of doing all of this was to get a platform to help T1s get better access to healthcare and education, to drive change in policy, to advocate for better policy for T1s, and basically do everything as an umbrella where we can come together and speak as one voice to the regulators. So that's our dream. And we'll probably tell you more about what we do later. But I do want to step on the wonderful presentation that Mihil has planned for you. So quickly, let's also introduce Mihil himself, the man of the hour, the speaker today. Mihil is also a person living with diabetes. He's a coder with HelpShift, and he'll tell you more about himself. But he's also one of my favorite voices, in Diatech today. He and I go a long way back. We both come from Club 1 KEM, and a lot of our friends from Club 1 KEM are here. To the uninitiated, Club 1 KEM is a support community formed in Pune by the KEMDU, which is the diabetes unit. The wonderful doctors, Dr. Yajnik and Dr. Jog, I think Sir is here today. So we all came together, we put Club 1, and we started a lot of our conversations on Diatech in the Club 1 blog and a lot of Club 1 activities. So here we are today. Mihil also writes for the T1DF India blog. So without much ado, I will give on the baton to Mihil, but quickly, workshop etiquettes, you guys. Please, please, please keep your microphones on the mute so that the speaker doesn't get disturbed. Feel free to unmute yourself and interrupt the speaker if you have a question. The chat logs are busy. We're all manning it. So if you have anything to add to, you can type it into the chat of the Zoom, and all of us will be there to answer your questions. So on that note, Mihil, the stadium is yours. The BS is yours. Thank you.
So hello, everyone. So thanks for the introduction. So if you guys want to know more about HelpShift or what we do at Pune Learns, feel free to reach out to me. So I have accounts on WhatsApp, Facebook, Insta, LinkedIn, Twitter, Google Pay, and Arogya City as well. So, you can just reach out to me. Also, as you can see, I'm 3 years into diabetes. So the objective of conducting this workshop is a selfish one. So basically, I want to learn from people more than teach them. like there are people like Prashant and Sai on this workshop whose diabetes is older than me. So yeah, so looking forward to learn from you guys. Yeah. Let me quickly go through the agenda. So we'll begin with me asking you guys a few questions, and we'll end with you guys asking me a few questions. Yeah. So okay. This is a Saturday morning. Normal people sleep on Saturdays. So at 11 a.m. So thankfully you guys are here, and I won't be putting you guys to sleep. That's my responsibility. So let me start with a few questions. I think there is a Slido link which has been shared. If you guys would click it, would be great. Even if you guys cannot do it, it's fine. But would be great if I just know you guys a bit better. Yeah. So
The link is in the chat section.
sorry. Yeah. You guys can scan this QR code and access this as well.
Can everybody please take a moment and click on the Slido link?
Oh, no one likes being interrupted while watching a movie. Okay. Cool. Are we done? I'm going on the next question.
Yep. I think maybe just read out the question as well, Mihal.
So does any of you
Yeah, we do. We do
FGM or
have
a
lecture.
CGM?
Yeah.
And don't worry if you don't know what it is. We'll shortly introduce it. Oh, so we have some people who do not use it. Awesome. Cool. The last one. The subjective one. Come on, people, vote. It's really important to vote.
You should have campaigned for the elections in Kerala.
Yeah, I would have done really well. Oh, so someone wants to become a diabetes Baba. Okay, nice.
No, we have Ramdev, thank you.
Learn to read the CGM graph. Addition to knowledge. Yeah, even I'm looking forward to addition of knowledge. Amazing. Unicorns like a cakewalk. Okay, nice. To see me heal. Okay, thank you. Diabetes awareness. Okay, we're done with this. I am shutting the poll down. Yeah. So thank you so much for these answers. Now the next question: how do you watch movies? Okay. So this is the My Sugar app where I log all my meals, boluses, and corrections. What is evident here is these gaps. Yeah. So you see that my sugar at 6 p.m. was 128 and at 8 p.m. it was 165. So how did I reach 165 from 128? Did I go from 128 to 80 to 165? Or did I go from 128 to 200 to 165? Or did I go directly to 165? Well, no one knows because I am watching a movie with interruptions. So due to which I was unable to get the sequence of events, right? So this is the My Sugar and this is what I do if I finger prick myself, right? But wait, I know someone who's watching a movie without any interruption. And here comes my Night Scout, which basically gives me the entire picture. So in this presentation, you will get graphs from Night Scout, Tomato, Glim, and Libre. So all these are apps which support different types of CGM. Yeah, all these are really different, but they also have their own advantages and disadvantages. However, fundamentally, they all do the same thing. They give a trend of your blood glucose readings. So it does not matter what app you use. What matters is how you use it. That's what I want to put forward. Okay? So before we start any kind of analysis, let's familiarize ourselves with a couple of terminologies. First of all, most of us are on a Libre Pro. A Libre Pro is a FGM. This is a flash glucose monitoring system. And I would not obtain readings until I scan my sensor with a reader or Glim. And some of us also own a Bluecon or a MyoMyo, which sits on top of the Libre Pro. So basically that device helps in converting our flash glucose monitoring system to a continuous glucose monitoring system. Basically, it converts our FGM to a CGM. With this, our phone or a smartwatch gets these blood glucose readings every 5 minutes. So with this, like, you get a hell lot of power. Like, you can set alarms for your highs, your low blood glucose, and you can also set alarms for your glucose rising fast or your glucose dropping. So yeah, so we've got this out of the way. So is there any confusion? Just let me know, or you can type it in the chat or whatever. So we'll be very happy to answer this. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Okay. One more thing on a side note. I just want you guys to show me some love, since it's the first time I'm conducting a diabetes workshop. So it would be great if you show some expressions or be interactive with me. Like, I'll be really happy. Yeah. So thanks a lot for that. Thanks in advance. So the next point.
Neil, Pallavi's raised a hand.
Okay. Yeah, Pallavi.
I think maybe it's by mistake, I guess. Sai.
By mistake, sorry.
No
That's
problem. No problem.
No worries, Pallavi. Please raise one intentionally as well. We'd love to speak to you.
So, okay, fine. So I put on a CGM or a FGM. And does that mean my sugars are sorted? Yes. I mean, look at this graph. My sugars are sorted, right? But wait, it does not mean my sugars are sorted. Okay, so I have this graph as well. So basically, CGM or FGM is not magic that, you know, one applies and sugars sort automatically. But what they do really well is provide a view of your sugars graphically. And one can use this data to make smart decisions. So we will see how to do that very shortly. And by the way, one of this graph belongs to the treasurer of T1DF, and the other one belongs to the general secretary of T1DF. So I won't say whose graph is, like, which is whose graph, but maybe you guys can try and figure out. So, okay, fine. So there are a ton of questions that one can get answers to just by looking at the graphs and analyzing them. And we'll be going through each one of these in detail, right? So is everyone with me till now? All good? Yeah. Okay. I'm assuming all good. Yeah. So fine. I clearly remember myself 3 years ago, confused as hell. I was bombarded with information. At that point in time, my A1C was 10.9. I was used to treating 250 as decent sugars because I was quite used to seeing 300 on the glucometer. So Dr. Yajnik gave me this piece of advice, which is simply gold. He asked me just to focus on one thing, which was to fix my fasting sugars. Yeah. A normal human being sleeps for 7 to 8 hours. And in that point in time, only your basal insulin is active. So morning fasting sugars determine how good your basal dose is. Let us see how. Yeah. Does anyone see any issues with this graph? Anyone? Yes, come on guys, you have to be interactive with me. Come on. Else I'll go to sleep. Like, I look for chances to sleep.
Feel free to leave the comments on the chat, guys.
Yeah, lows and highs, it is mixed up.
Yeah. So
Mix of lows and highs. The graph
oh,
is,
lows and highs, but I'm sleeping in range, I'm waking up in range, so there's no problem, right?
yeah.
Okay.
So that says, is the range too wide?
Is the range too wide? Okay. Okay, we'll get to that. Okay.
It should be more flatter during the night because it's just the basal that should work.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's right. That's right. You nailed it. Okay, perfect. So initial impressions seem to tell me that I slept in range and I woke up in range. So, which is like not a problem at all. Okay. So imagine if I slept here. Yeah, somewhere here. If you can see my pointer, where would I wake up? I would wake up here. Right. So the thumb rule that I follow is, if I see an increase of more than 30 mgdl, then I increase my basal by a bit. Also, what my medical professional had advised me is not to make drastic changes in basal. Like at max, you need to make 10% changes in your basal, like plus 10 or minus 10. Yeah. A quick question around this. Could anyone tell me what if this graph was not going upward, And what if this graph was going downward? Like what action can be taken at that point in time with respect to your basal? Like consecutively, if I see this graph going down every day, like I sleep here and I wake up here. Can anyone tell me what action can I take?
So if we are on MDI, maybe we can take the basal during the morning.
Okay. What about trying and reducing your basal? Because here, since I was only my basal is active and I'm spiking, which means I need an increase in my basal.
That's also a popular answer, Mihil. Everybody in the chat says, so Rahul, Vikas, Siddharth, Pallavi, they're all saying reduce basal.
Perfect.
Utpala, yeah.
Awesome. So,
Utpala says reduce basal 2 hours before the spike.
okay. Okay.
Yeah, for those on pump, of course.
Yeah, we'll get to a specific pump specific cases as well, a few of them. So yeah, that's also there. Okay. So the aim of this activity, which is FFF, is to get your nighttime graph look like this. Say you sleep for 8 hours and you have a perfect basal. So 8 of your hours are like sorted, which is like 1/3 of your day, right? Now you just need to firefight the next 2/3 of your day. Like please note guys that this actually takes time to achieve, right? It requires a lot of calibration, a lot of calculation. Right? It's very difficult or almost impossible to have this kind of a graph daily. Like it's not that you fix your fasting and you have this graph for the rest of your life. No, that's not possible. There will be a few hiccups here and there, and we'll come to that as well. Yeah. Okay. So, what kind of a person are you? Okay, weird question. Okay, are you patient or are you impatient? Okay, so you're still thinking if you're patient or you're impatient, right? Okay, now don't worry. We'll make your graphs reveal that about you. Yeah. So what happened here? Yeah. So I was at a sugar level of around 200, 220. Yeah. So I carb counted and I corrected, but I ate before my sugars were in range. Like, why would I do this? Like, I'm giving this talk. I should be the last person to do this kind of a thing. Yeah. So, well, basically, I was supposed to step out, and that basically would mean that I was supposed to go and walk, and my insulin would start acting faster. But that did not happen. Can anyone tell me why? In the chat, can anyone speak out? The answer is really silly. So the answer is because I did not get out. Someone came, like someone came home, and then I was stuck with that person. So anyway, so I did not get out, and hence you can see this Mount Kilimanjaro. Yeah, over here. So this signifies that I was too impatient. Yeah. So anyway, so this is about this. Are we clear? Like any doubts over here? Okay, I'm assuming no. Going ahead. Yeah, did someone speak? Okay, no. Okay, fine. So, I'm someone who consumes like carbs quite regularly, and like I like so much so that I call myself a carbivore, right? So this has its own advantages and disadvantages. Advantages being that I do not hesitate to eat vada pav on a tapri, and the disadvantage is that I need to nail my insulin timing and my dosage every time I eat carbs, or else I may end up going hypo or hyper, right? So I have observed that insulin takes around 30 minutes for me to start acting. So by 30 minutes, I mean that if I inject insulin now, it will take around 30 minutes for my blood glucose levels to start dropping. Yeah, this may vary from person to person. Like I just conducted a random survey yesterday. So size activation time is 5 minutes. Into brackets, I'm jealous. And Angad's activation time is 15 minutes, right? So can anyone tell me, was I patient or was I impatient in this graph? Like by this graph, did I wait a little too much? Hello, hello.
Yep, I think you did wait bit too long.
Yeah, yeah. So what does
Amla
this?
says you waited a lot. Parinaz agrees with you. Nidhi agrees with you that you waited. Rahul says time pick
Yeah.
how. Sneha says yes. Mansi says
Waited
yes,
long.
you waited.
Yeah, waited long.
Okay, I waited long. Okay, so what? So that means that as a
Mehul,
person,
just a moment, Mehul. I think
yeah.
Rajendra Shivale, I think you are trying to present from your screen. Could you actually stop presenting from your uh, Rajendra Shivale?
Anirudh, can you
Can you
stop
pull
your
it,
I'm
screen?
Nidhi?
trying as well. I'm trying as well.
Apologies for the interruption. Meanwhile, Utpala also agrees, Komal agrees, Neil, that you waited too long.
Rajendra Shivale, I'm just removing you from the meeting for the time being. Please rejoin if you'd like to.
Thanks for agreeing, everyone. Which means that I have the majority. Yes.
Now that your screen heist is over, let's just understand what was the outcome.
Yeah. So let me tell you what exactly happened over here, right? So my I was around like 150, and I thought that oh, my insulin will take some time and my carbs will act really fast and stuff like that. So what? And I also had like 1 unit of correction, since I like to remain in the range of like 100. So what I basically did is I put in my insulin here, and I got lost so much in my work that after 50 minutes I realized, oh, I'm supposed to eat. By the time I ate, I was already dropping. My carbs started acting here. So basically, I was too patient. So as a character, I'm too impatient as well as too patient. Yeah? Does everyone get this? Everyone with me till now? Yeah? Perfect. I'm assuming yes. Okay. So, okay. I hope all of you have had your breakfast, because I'm going to get you hungry now. Yeah. In some time. So there are a few factors which have helped me time my meals. So one is my insulin activation time, because there is no use if your insulin is always playing catch up with your blood glucose, like your blood glucose is spiking and all the time. Yeah.
Just I think people are unable to see the presentation. Can you just stop the presentation and cast again?
I'll do that.
Also, guys, if you would like to just see the presentation, you can click on the pin icon you see. I mean, when the presentation comes up, you can just click on the pin icon, pin to screen.
Yes, now it is up. So yeah, perfect.
All up? Everything, it's visible?
Yes, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Thanks a lot, man. Thanks a lot. Sorry. So insulin activation time is really important, because as we discussed, like, there is no use for if your insulin is always playing catch up. And there is also no use that if you wait too much for your insulin to, act, and basically you do not eat until you go hypo, and then you eat and you correct, and you go in a cycle, right? Also, what we saw in the previous graph is that the last to last graph, where I was too impatient, was that if my blood glucose level is high, right, I need to wait for it to come in range. I cannot start eating at 400. I mean, even if I put in all my correction dose and everything, the carbs will definitely start acting before my, my insulin will have to go and keep on playing catch up with my carbs. So these are 2 points, like insulin activation time and my current VG level, which I consciously keep in mind before actually eating something, right? So this is one thing. Any fans of medu vada or Mysore cheese masala dosa over here? Yes, no?
Big one.
Yes.
Thanks.
Big one. Live for medu vada.
So
we got the maximum number of yes for this question. So type ones are, most of them are foodies.
Yes.
While most people said big fan, some people also have slided in the suggestion of a ghee roast.
Okay. Okay, I'll try that out. Okay, so basically, based on the composition of what we eat, different food spike us, like different foods spike us differently. Say medu vada and dal vada will spike me like really slow, and I do not even wait for my insulin to start acting before I eat this, which is great, right? And this comes from someone who has a terrible insulin activation time. I mean, 30 minutes, and still I'm saying that I just put in my insulin and I start eating, right? However, however, when I feel like eating Mysore cheese masala dosa at Anna, which is a tapri near my house, I need 30 to 40 minutes at least. And then I go on and enjoy my dosa, right? So what happens here is the spike caused by this masala dosa is so fast that my insulin is unable to catch up. So what I do is basically I wait for my insulin to start acting, and once it started acting, I am sure that it'll catch up with the spike which is caused by the Mysore cheese masala dosa, right? So that's how I time my meals. Any doubts here?
I think maybe Mihil, could you repeat it again? I think it was a little faster. So
Okay. Okay. So
Can you please repeat?
sure. Okay.
Sir, I have a doubt.
Yeah.
Sir, good afternoon, sir.
I'm not sir. Sorry, sir. I'm Nihil. Like sir makes me sound old. Like look old. Like, tell me. Yeah.
Sir, my daughter is a type 1 diabetic patient.
Mhm.
When I going to check regularly, I came to know that it's raising up from 4 p.m. to 6 or 6:30 p.m. How could I reduce it?
Okay.
Do they have any plan?
Yeah. So there is a solution to most of the problems on the, like in this world. So yeah, so 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. is what you're saying, right? Okay.
Yes, sir.
And is your daughter on MDI or on pump?
15-year-old.
No. Is she injecting herself or is she on a pump?
Yes, sir. She is injecting herself.
Okay.
Taking a particular range of unit, but I came to know that when she is eating food, it's the insulin is acting for only 2 to 3 hours. After that, it's going the glucose is getting raised up. So
Right.
what shall I do?
Right. So the first thing, like I can share my experience and you can correlate it with your daughter, because I cannot give exact answers for your daughter, right?
Yes, sir. Yes,
So,
sir. Yes.
so what I basically what I see here is that you're saying that your insulin is acting for a couple of hours or 3 hours at the max, and
Yes,
then her glucose levels are like increasing, right?
Yes,
That's
sir.
the right understanding. Okay. So all your fasting sugars depend on how good your basal is. Is she on a basal? Like, does she take a basal insulin once every 24 hours?
Yes, sir. 24 hours once.
Yes. So once
Tresiba.
every 24 hours. Okay,
Yes.
Tresiba, right? So had I been in your place, because I was at the same place like a couple of years ago on
Okay.
Tresiba, right? What I did is when I checked the range of all my fasting sugars, and all of them were like really high. By all my fasting sugars, I mean morning, as before breakfast, before lunch, before dinner, everything was high. Right? It was high, right? So what I did is I started making adjustments to my basal,
Okay.
right? So what happens here is, if your basal is sorted, right,
Okay.
then you just have to focus on carb counting your meal and putting your insulin accordingly. Like, you won't have these unwanted spikes,
Okay,
right?
sir. Tell me.
So basically your basal insulin, like Tresiba, that's what I had done for myself. Yeah. So you need to basically go on get onto a glucose monitor, analyze data. We surely can connect offline on that. But you need to basically first make adjustments to the basal. However, some meals have 2 spikes as well. Yeah. For me, my lunch, a lot of time. Can someone go on mute? Like, I think my voice is okay. Not.
Also, sorry, Nihil, quick suggestion. I'm a little afraid you're getting sidetracked. Is it all right if you take all questions like this in the end of the session, unless it pertains to the slide that you're talking about?
Yeah.
And Elava ma'am, yeah, we will be staying for quite
Okay,
some
sir.
time
Okay,
even after the call. So yeah, we could
okay, sir.
definitely take up the questions at the
Okay, sir.
end of the call.
Sorry for the interruption.
No
No
problem.
issues. No issues. Yeah. But I'll go to sleep at 2 p.m. Okay, like that's my hard stop. So anyway, so this slide I went very fast, right? So I'll just repeat the slide. So so when I eat medu vada, like basically when I eat a lot of fried food, right? My blood glucose does spike, but it starts spiking after like 40 minutes after I eat or 50 minutes after I eat. Yeah, the spike is not instantaneous when I eat, like as opposed to when I am eating like pure like rice or masala dosa or something of that kind, right? So when I eat medu vada or dal vada, right, what I do is basically I time my insulin in such a way that I do not wait because I know my insulin is going to take 30 minutes to act, right? By that time, I'll go hypo because my medu vada and my dal vada wouldn't have spiked me, right? So that's why. And on the other hand, masala dosa like spikes me like instantaneously. Yeah. So, but I know my insulin won't be able to play catch up with it. So I bolus well in advance. I bolus 30 minutes in advance. Is that clear?
So Mihal, I'll just add one more point here, like, maybe just to make it easy, right? Like I'll tell, our participants that anything that is fried, basically like medu vada, or these are the things like, which are deep fried. So it has a lot of oil in it, and that means like there is a lot of fat as well in it. So when there is a lot of fat involved in it, that means like, the food will be processed like, you will have like latent spikes, not the immediate spikes. So for that reason, Mihal is basically saying that like, he doesn't wait longer, like once he takes his insulin, like, I mean, to have his food, he doesn't wait longer. But whereas like, the dosa and these kind of varieties where he would like to wait because there is an immediate spike where he notices like, within an hour's time, like he could shoot up to 200 or 200 plus. Mihal, I think you can go ahead. Sorry for the interruption.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Anirudh, for chipping in. Yeah. Okay. Now let us come to the monster, which is carb counting. So carb counting is something which one takes time to master. So look at this graph. Like I've clearly underestimated the amount of carbs in what I ate, and I needed a correction dose later. So now comes the question, like, did I wait enough? Like we had just spoken about the waiting game. What do you think? Like, did I wait enough to eat what I ate? Like, I think the answer is here, but can you just observe and tell me that did I wait enough for my insulin to start acting? Anyone? Yes, no? Like from the chat. Okay.
I think,
So,
can you please repeat the question, Mihal? I think people are a little confused.
Okay, fine. So I'm saying here that I have underestimated the amount of carbs that I was going to consume. Okay, say I was going to consume 65 grams of carbohydrates, right? And here I'm saying that maybe it was more than 65. But again, you guys may ask the question that, okay, fine, but did you wait enough? Like, is it a waiting thing or is it that you under bolused? So what do you think? Like, did I under bolus or did I not wait enough? That's the question.
Not wait enough.
Not wait enough? Why do you say so?
Because if you see that, then after a spike, there is a drop also. So
Okay.
I guess you have given the correct dose, but
Mhm.
you have not waited enough for the insulin to, be active.
Oh, sorry for not providing that data. I needed a correction dose here.
Yeah, I think if you guys see the notes on the right side, right, like 9:40 a.m. is when like he noticed that it was 65 mgdl, and then like like he took the dosage of 7 units, whatever required at 9:40 a.m. and he started eating at 10:15 a.m. But in between 9:40 and 10:15 a.m., you would notice that he has dropped more than 60, like I mean under 65, maybe up to 50 or something of that sort. And then the next thing is like, he took his correction probably somewhere like where he noticed the biggest spike when he was at 250 or something of that sort.
So you
Is
can
that right, Mahil?
you can see the slight drop which is here. Like you can see drop, and then drop again. Like it's going like, it's just going downhill. Yeah. So basically this was not the waiting game, but this was my cup counting mess up which happened. Yeah.
So what is the differentiator according to you?
So according to me, what do you mean by differentiator?
Like what is where do you draw the line that you're saying it's not a waiting game because you ate instantly?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's what I explained. Like if you see this drop over here, right? Like these are 24-hour graphs. So this drop cannot be like seen so precisely, right? Had it been like a 3-hour focus, I could have actually shown you this sharp arrow, like the sharp drop, which would be evident that my insulin had already started acting. So yeah.
So I think Mihal, do you want me to like a little bit explain about what I would do in this scenario?
Yeah, please do that.
Yeah. So I mean, 9:40 a.m. I noticed myself at 65, and then I'm I decided I need to have my breakfast, right? So maybe I would not wait until 10:15 a.m. first thing, because I mean, I'm taking my insulin when I am at 65. So I know that my waiting time is like 20 or 30 minutes, whatever it is, but I'm way under the target. So I'm giving that way under the target lenience that I can eat little faster. I do not really need to wait the 20 minutes. But yeah, I mean, here there is one more thing, that the carb correction went wrong. I mean, the carb counting went wrong, sorry. So yeah, I mean, maybe I would have chosen to eat maybe by 9:50 after I took my insulin at 9:40. And then yeah, as soon as I see the biggest spike coming in, I would take my corrections again. So here I would say, yeah.
I don't think the spike would have been so bad. Like had you carb counted correctly and eaten instantly.
So here, yeah, I mean,
yeah,
he waited a little longer, and as well as he under-bolused.
Yeah.
Excuse
me. So up to what extent we can think it is going higher? That means normal range is 200. Let us assume that is 200. So when should we take the correction dose? At what end? How can we predict now it is going or spiking like that?
So Mohan, I will say something I mean, it is not targets are by individual first thing. I personally try to keep my targets under 140, whereas I think Angad tries to keep it like 160 and Sai keeps at 150. So everyone has their own targets. So, but yeah, I mean, the time you need to think of making the corrections, you understand that you have undercounted the carbs, is when you see every 5 minutes there is an rapid increase of 10 or 20 or something of that sort. So when you see your CGM Glimp or any of these apps, right, so you will get this +5 or +10 kind of numbers besides the the actual BG value. So when you see the rapid increases, that means either, I mean, if you're consuming like a fruity or a Maaza or something of that, then yeah, you could expect to see +5 and +10. And if you're aware of it, yeah, you're well and good. But if you had regular meals, what you have it, and you are seeing +5 and +10, that means you have definitely underestimated your carbs. And you see that 3 times in a succession, 4 times in a succession, then yeah, I mean, that's when I would say I would take my corrections in.
Thanks a lot, sir. I have not at all observed these points. Actually, +5, +10, +3. I was about.
Mihil, do you have any screenshot of Glimp where you get to see that +5, +10 in your previous slides, maybe?
No. I came to know, sir. I came to know that point, but actually, I have not. I have neglected that +5, +10.
Got it.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Sir.
No problem at all. Yeah.
Sorry, can I interrupt? I have a question here, Mihil.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I've just started using CGM for a few months now, so I'm still understanding.
Okay.
But then this example that you gave, that you come to know that your sugars are at 65. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you ask me, Mihil, I am not very comfortable at 65 to take my bolus units before eating something, because it gets me from some trouble, till it reaches 100. Okay.
Okay.
So what do I do? And correct me if I'm wrong. That's what I want to understand. So what do I do is, when I know that it's 65, I emit, for example, if it's before lunch, and I quickly munch some lunch, So what do I do? If I'm eating 2 chapatis, I try to eat 1 chapati, dal, or whatever vegetable is there. And I wait for 15-20 minutes. When I see that, okay, it's rising, maybe around 90 or 100, then I take my bolus units, and then I eat my remaining lunch. So is that the right way to do it?
That is perfect strategy, ma'am. Actually, I mean, yeah, I mean, you can probably narrow it down more, like, in the longer term. Maybe
Right.
now you're waiting until 90. So once you get your confidence levels higher, then maybe you
Right.
would do it like at 75. So, I mean, it all boils down to the practice, ma'am. So, yeah, I mean,
Yes.
whatever you're
Yes.
doing is like absolutely correct, I would say.
Okay. Thank you so much. Yeah. Great.
So that is what Anirudh would do. But so this is like, I don't know like how old this graph is, but what I would do now is basically I would eat something really fast acting, not my lunch. I would like I have kept this Glucovita next to me, right? So if I'm at 65, just munch, I don't know, 2 or 3 Glucovitas. Let me get out of this hypoglycemia, even if it's like 5 mgdl. And then the normal game begins, the carb counting, the waiting, and the eating game. Yeah, so that's what I do. So this is like just okay. So this is just this presentation is more about a series of mistakes that I've committed in these 3 years, and I am sharing it with you guys.
Sorry, Mihil, I muted the participants.
Oh, perfect. Thanks. Yeah. So, okay, are we clear here? Because my insulin had clearly started acting here, right? So we are clear here that my insulin has started acting, but I underestimated the carbs, right? Okay, so yeah, this is the next graph, like same day, but another instance, right? So was it really 40 grams? And months bitten twice shy. Okay, so I had underestimated my carbs in the morning. It played on my mind. Later in the day, I overbolused. Now, how do I know that I overbolused here? Okay, thankfully I knew that I was dropping over here. Yeah, I was dropping here. So I ate somewhere here, right? So I ate something extra over here. And had I not done that, this line, this red line would probably have been longer. Are you getting my point? On the same day like this happened, this actually played on my mind. This is the same graph that I shared previously. And yeah, so I took corrective action. As soon as I was dropping, I realized that, hey, no, I've got this carb counting game wrong again. So yeah, any doubts around this? Does anyone want to add anything?
Rahul asked you if it's dinner at 6 to 8 p.m.
If it's dinner, oh no, I think I was just snacking. Like, I don't remember. It was, yeah. Who eats 40 grams of carb for dinner?
I do.
My dinner is, I don't know, I think 60, 50 or 60 is my baseline. But anyway, as I said, I am a carnivore. So anyway, okay. So we are clear here. Okay, we'll answer a few more questions with graphs, right? So is my insulin working? And is my basal requirement changing? And is exercise impacting my blood glucose levels? Like we'll look into all of this, right? This one is exclusively for pump users, right? So pump users need to apply a patch to the body, and every time a patch is bad, your pump will alert you, yeah, and will say that delivery stop. Okay. So now your graph can tell you that your patch is bad even before the pump does. Yeah. Let's see how. So unexplained spikes without eating anything and correction not working may indicate a bad patch, and this will indicate that a delivery stopped message is right around the corner, because you can see in this graph, right, there is an unexplained spike between 3 and 6, right, and once the patch was changed, you can see a flat line here, right. Had this not been the case, this would have definitely been like the correction wouldn't have worked and the person would have spiked or he would have remained constant, but I'm sure that the blood glucose levels wouldn't come down. So any doubts over here? Like insulin delivery may stop due to all these issues. Sai had a patch issue last night. Sai, is that right?
That's right. So fun story. I had absolutely nothing wrong when I went to bed, and then I saw that when I woke up in the morning, all night my sugar was at 200 in a straight line. So the first thing I did was I peeled off that little insertion site of my pump, and true enough, I found that there was a pus accumulation or a wound there.
Even Joe had a patch issue 2 days back. Wow.
Even Joe had a patch issue. It's very popular. I mean that it's because when we wear the pump site, the patch, we typically puncture our bodies, and then a lot of us do have patch issues, more often than we would like.
Okay. So,
is there any other reason why your insulin would stay like that during the night and not a patch issue in case that we are not using a pump?
You could be sick.
Okay.
Like if you have a fever, if you have, or in the case of women, menstruation also, if you will cause stable hikes in blood glucose. So typically around your period, it's customary to hike your basal.
Okay.
Okay. Has anyone ever missed basal, taking their basal insulin, and then you panic, then you call your doctor or your diabody up? Anyone? Yes, no?
I've missed many times.
Okay. Someone else? No one has missed the basal. Okay. Fine. This is a perfect graph of missing your basal.
There's a lot of me going on in the chat. Don't worry.
Oh, guys, me too. So,
yesterday only.
Oh, yesterday that's happened. Okay. Did your graph look like this?
I have spike on morning sugars.
Okay. Morning. So this is the morning sugar. Then later what happened? Did you take your
now just few hours back I took my basal and bolus including both. So let's see now.
Perfect. All the best, fingers crossed. Yeah. So anyway, unexplained fasting spikes. So what we saw previously is that there was an unexplained fasting spike, but that got sorted with changing the patch, right? So unexplained fasting spikes and multiple correction requirements throughout the day. As I said, our fasting sugars, our pre-meal sugars depend on our basal, any pre-meal sugar, right? So that does mean that there is something off with your basal, okay? And in this case, I had missed my basal, okay? Can anyone tell me whether I was on MDI or on a pump over here? Can pump users miss basal? Is the question. Yes, no?
Yeah, bad site, cannula coming out.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So, amazing. So what happened here is a very interesting case study, right? So all my corrections were going in, but my basal was not going in. Reason being, my corrections and my boluses were 3 units, 5 units, 10 units. Yeah. So there was this pressure which was getting in. and because of that, it was actually forcing the insulin, inside my body. However, the drop by drop basal that goes in was not going, and that's why I required multiple corrections throughout the day, and it was like too late, like a day and a half passed, and then I realized that there is a possibility that basal may not go even in pumps. So pump users, for you guys, this is what do you say, a note.
Priya wants to share something really fun with you, Mihil. She said once accidentally, instead of her basal, she took 16 units of bolus and had quite the adventure after that.
Oh, so did you become a carnivore after that? What happened? Like,
Priya, would you like to unmute and tell us what did you do? Okay, I think she may have audio issues. Go on, Mihil.
Okay, perfect. Now I have one doubt. Okay, can anyone tell me what happens if one is seeing this kind of a graph at night consecutively? Like 3-4 nights, I'm just seeing drops, continuous drops. What does that mean? I have fixed my fasting. Like 2 years ago, I fixed my fasting. Now after 2 years, I see these continuous drops in my sugar. Yeah. So can anyone tell me? Like I've just started doing yoga. Like, so I'm seeing this kind of a graph now at night. So can anyone tell me what this means? What action does this require?
Komal says your basal is more.
My basal is more. Okay. So does that mean that my basal can change? Like basal requirement can change over time? Yeah, obviously. So my basal requirement may change. Yeah. What if this graph, instead of going downwards, is going upwards? What does that mean?
Vikas says it will change. Siddharth says basal is less. Vikas says you need more basal.
Yeah. So
Komal says basal is less.
Correct. So do all of us agree that our basal requirements may change over time? Our activity levels, our weight, everything like determines, like there are a bunch of factors which determine how much basal we require, and this may change over time. Yeah. So our graphs are a perfect example. Like just analyze your graphs and you may know that that your basal requirement is changing. So fix fasting first. If you do it if you've done it like 2 or 3 years ago, does not mean that it's going to last your entire life. You have to work on it, right? So yeah, so that is there. Okay. So we are
Mihil, just one question. While you were explained it perfectly, this scenario is applicable only when rest of your variables are fixed, right? Your meal at the dinner, or your sugar levels during your sleeping time or before dinner, and the insulin dose. So all of these factors are you are not playing with them, and then this kind of a graph is coming regularly, right? That is the scenario.
Yes. So I played with my activity levels. Yeah. So I started doing yoga and then I started getting this kind of a graph. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's not really that I've not played with any factor, because basal requirement depends on a whole lot of factors, right?
I think because at night, I mean, yeah, what Divesh is saying is actually correct, because while you're sleeping, I mean, your bolus has probably stopped acting. There's no food basically in your system. Only basal is acting. So from like 3 to 6 a.m., if the drop is happening, it's only because of the basal and not any active bolus in your system. Divesh.
Yeah.
Yeah, but 12 to 3 spike is probably because of your dinner.
Yeah, exactly. So what I wanted to say was that the basal cannot be the only factor in here. The dinner, what I ate in the dinner, too much of fat may also cause a delayed spike at the sleeping hours, and then it may go down. So that was my consideration in this case.
Yes, that's correct. That can also happen. That's why I said that you need to monitor your graph for like consecutively, like say you can experiment with your dinner as well, and then you can you can decide whether it's the basal only, because 3 to 6 mein, like I don't think anything else was acting, so like it's only going down, and I don't see any other thing which would determine which would actually ask me to change my basal apart from this. Yeah, perfect. So okay, fine. So we are getting to exercise. Theoretically, yeah.
I have a question about the earlier slide.
Yeah.
If I see a spike from, let's say, 12 o'clock to 3 o'clock in the night, right?
Yeah.
And I want to adjust basals now. Let's say it's not an effect of the food I had for dinner. Where
Right.
do I, this question is primarily for pumpers, okay? Where do we make the basal changes? Do we make them from 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock onwards? Because the insulin starts, it has a 4-hour period of activity, or do we start only at 12 o'clock onwards, the increasing of basals?
Okay. So first of all, that you need to ensure that this is a recurring pattern.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the thumb rule is a couple of hours before you actually are getting this spike or this low.
Yeah, 2 hours is the thumb rule, generally speaking.
Yeah.
Yeah, so 2 hours before the spike actually starts, that is where we start increasing the basals?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, is everyone cool with this slide?
Yes,
Okay.
Nihal, I think we can go ahead.
Awesome. So exercise. I would now like to open the house for exercise, like your experience while exercising. Theoretically, we know that anaerobic exercise increases in leads to an increase in blood glucose, and aerobic leads to a reduction in blood glucose. But I would love if you guys would share your experiences, could show your graphs. So yeah, the house is open. Feel free to post anything in chat or unmute yourself and speak out. We also have like a couple of experts, Angad and Anirudh, who are like into exercising, workouts, etc. So they can also like share their insights with you guys. So yeah.
So yeah, personally, like, I mean, I'll give my examples. Like, I am a pump user. So what I do, like, I mean, most of my exercises, like, I'll be catching my breath during my workouts. So like, for example, I go for a run. And when I go for a run, what I do is like, 30 minutes before the run, I just take like, 1 or 2 units of bolus. The reason is because during the run, like, within 10 to 15 minutes of my run, I do see a big spike. So for that reason, like, what I started doing like later on is like, I started taking my bolus like 30 minutes before I plan to go to the run. And then, I cut down my basal for like, if I take like I'm just putting down some numbers. Let's assume I took 1 unit of insulin and my basal is 1 unit an hour. So when I take that 1 unit of bolus, I just cut down my next 1 hour of basal. On my pump, I just suspend my basal for the next 1 hour. So it kind of like, makes my levels to be on a straighter line, like, more of a straighter line. So the spike would not be as bad because I have enough bolus. And at the same time, at the end of the workout, I do not start going low because I have my basal suspended. So it's not like, I mean, one thing works for all is definitely not the thing. And also even for me, like, for different workouts, it works differently. So it is important to understand how your body is behaving for each workout and like, do pre-bolus or cut down your basal. And if you are on, again, if you are on MDI as well, same time, yeah, I mean, something like, take enough juice, like maybe, when you start your run, you can still take 1 unit of bolus or whatever it is. And then maybe once you finish your workout, be ready with your juice or whatever it is, like, I mean, whichever you prefer to. So if you are more of interested in keeping the straight lines. Prashant, you want to add something? You raised your hand.
Yeah, because some people in the chat have been saying, for me, aerobic and anaerobic work differently. I think it has more to do with your heart rate and the intensity of the workout. For example, for like I do weight training exercise, I don't run. So for me, even walking at a moderate speed increases my heart rate. So that might increase. And for a marathon runner like Angad, maybe even running at 8 km per speed, he'll be like, his heart rate might be like, normal. So it doesn't spike for him unless he does a very extra paced sprint. So the heart rate and the intensity of the workout differs on each individual. So that
I think,
matters.
Prashant, let me try to put it in very simple terms as well. So the time you start breathing heavier, like, you are trying to catch your breath, then that means that is the moment like liver is dumping the glucagon. So that means your sugars are going to raise. But then again, livers want some glucose back into, it wants some glucose back into the liver. So whatever you are eating, or like, whatever the glucose is being generated in your body, it's going and being dumped into the liver again. So there will be like that slight difference of your basal requirements or anything of that sort, like, your insulin requirements during that period. So we would not say definitely it's not good to go for a run, or definitely not be in a stage like to catch your breath. But yeah, see, fitness is the primary thing end of the day, like, to live longer. Yeah, we all have to be fit enough. So at the same time, like, we need to understand how our body is functioning, and at the same time manage our insulin requirements for that period. So yeah, as like I was telling before, I really do not need a bolus for run. But it's just that to keep it a straighter line, I need a bolus for run and cut down my basal. So I'm just leveling it out.
Yeah, just to add there, like people are asking, do they need to, pre-bolus if they're spiking? So even for anaerobic exercises, if you're like, going really hard, the increase in BG is only temporary. It's not like you're not gonna keep on spiking if you're like, continuing at that pace for 1 hour or 2 hours. Initially there will be a spike, but then after a while, the levels will drop because at the end of the day, you're spending energy, you're doing workout. So whether you need to pre-bolus or not has to depend on how long are you going to do that. Because if you're going to continue the workout, say for more than an hour, the initial rise in BG will be followed by a decline in that as well. So if you're pre-bolusing in advance, you need to really look out for the hypo that will be falling soon. But say your workout is hardly for, I say, 15-minute or 20-minute sprint. So at that point, maybe bolusing might make sense for you, because by the end of 15 minutes, when you're done with the workout, your levels will be in range, and then you can probably have some snacks after that to account for the insulin you have taken initially.
Divyesh, you want to add something?
Yeah, this is slightly different from what you guys have been saying, but very common question that even few have asked, that we go for a walk or cycling and then our sugars shoot up. So the normal tendency people have is that eat something before the workout. That does not work for all the time of the day. If you are doing especially in the morning vis-a-vis in the evening. So if I take my example, in the morning, if I am going for a run, even if it is an hour run and I'm not taking any insulin, my sugars will slightly go up, because there are a lot of stress factors and insulin requirement in the morning is more. So I take our unit if I am at say 120, 130, and then I go for a run, and during the run and after the run I am almost at the steady line. But in the evening I won't take that 1 unit, because there is an active bolus, and also in the evening time my sugars are not normally tend to go down. So this is a very important factor, because lots of my friends have also experienced this, and this has been a struggle point when you start activity. So this
Yeah,
is one thing
exactly.
that I wanted to highlight.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah.
And
So
yeah, the
yeah.
time you are starting the workout, yeah, your blood glucose levels is again most important
Yeah,
factor.
especially, and one more factor for that, the morning problem I think most T1s have is the feet on the floor. So irrespective of working out or not, once you get up and start your normal morning chores, then it starts spiking. So that added with the workout will spike even more. So feet on the floor is something that we don't hear, or people don't discuss, or they're not even aware themselves that this phenomenon exists, other than the dawn phenomenon. It's different.
Yeah, I think everyone's body like reacts very differently to this stuff, because personally for me, I've never needed to take insulin, before starting a run. I'll more or less stay in range, and after a while my sugars will go low. So before you basically decide to make any changes, if you are taking a bolus or not, just make sure that the pattern is recurring over a few days. If it's like a very common occurrence, daily occurrence for you, that you're spiking with, like, after starting the workout, then it makes sense to, just take a bolus to account for that. Just find a pattern and then try to tackle it.
Okay. So everyone, thanks for
I just had a doubt actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, for this feet on the floor phenomena, I mean, I've recently noticed this. it is true that as soon as I wake up, I think I need to get started with my insulin. Otherwise, my sugar just goes on. It's like in range at about 70 and 80, but then it just goes on increasing rapidly, and it won't stop till it's gone above 200. So I just noticed that, like, if I just laze around in bed for some more time, it's gone very high. So in these cases, what would you advise? Like, any idea?
So, generally speaking about, adjusting insulin, I think it is always good to consult your doctor or your endocrinologist and do it. But then here we are sharing our experience, so I'll just say mine. For me, feet on the floor, how I do it is like before I start any activity or before I have my morning tea, I take 1 or 2 units of bolus, and then I go about things so that as you said, the spike from 80 to 200, it stays around till 120 or 130. So again, trial and error, see how many units works for you. And then with the bolus, you can minimize that. That's the only way you can stop the feet on the floor, because your body is starting to, work the organs and releasing the glucose so that, that's the technical reason.
If I'm allowed to speak, Prashant and Sneha, thanks for pointing out that phenomena, the feet on the floor phenomena. Just would like to share my experience with that, and I feel the phenomena kicks in a lot when there's a huge amount of time that, so I am on MDI, and there's a long gap for you to not take an insulin shot, especially the bolus shot. So I think if you can attempt to reduce the amount of time that you've had between the shots, that also helps in reducing that.
Sneha, hi Divesh on this side. Just one thing I would like to know: are you taking like Lantus, or you are on Insulated, or the a
I'm
different
taking
kind of?
Lantus and Novorapid.
Okay, okay. Then what Prashant says is the correct way. If people are on insulated, normally this kind of pattern is observed because their insulated almost getting over, and then they wake up, they have to take the shot after an hour or two, and then they see this kind of a pattern. But otherwise, taking a bolus in these cases is a better option.
And one more thing I want to add is, like, people confuse feet on the floor with dawn phenomenon. So dawn phenomenon happens even if you're sleeping, but feet on the floor, it depends on the time you put your feet on the floor. That is just after you wake up. So even I had a lot of trouble in figuring out what exactly it was, and not many people address this issue. That's why, like, I address this.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for this discussion. Thanks a lot for these inputs. In fact, I got to learn a lot from you guys. Side note, Prashant has still not put his feet on the floor, I think. It's just 12 noon till now. Adding on to that, the only marathon that I'm going to run will be a sleep marathon, which I'll participate in. So, yeah, let's go here. So recently, this colleague of mine shared a tweet with me where a guy had put on a glucose monitor and did analysis around it. Like, this is a very famous tweet. So not sure if he's diabetic, but I got really excited after seeing this. You know why? I'll explain. So as you can see, this is my report. This is my Libre report from October 29, right? So this is the report you get at the end of your 14-day Libre cycle or whatever. And I was recently diagnosed. So it was October 29, 2018 is what we are speaking about. Yeah, I was diagnosed around April. I was just trying to fix my sugars, and what Sai asked me to do is, just log all the data possible in the world, take a printout of the report, and meet her. And that's what I did, right? What we did after that is we started using various colors to highlight different meals, what meals were spiking me, what meals were not. These are the time. This like all these are my insulin doses. So 5 units, 10 units. We use different colors to make it interesting. 16 units is my basal. As you can see, my FFF was still in progress. So yeah, this was a work in progress, and this was a great experience because you can see everything in one picture, right? So also we used a divide and conquer policy where, if you can see, we just have highlighted sandwich. So we tried to perfect the the bolus for a sandwich, and then we got to my ICR and my ISF numbers accordingly, like at least my ICR, because then I needed some adjustments later because sandwich was spiking me, etc. And then that's how I started learning how to use these reports, right? Sai, if you would like to add something to this, how we did it, like something more if I've missed, I definitely have missed something. So feel free to do that. Yeah. But this is a great activity which you guys can also do and share it with us. Tweet it out as well. So yeah, Sai.
Sai, this is really sweet that you brought this up. So sorry, I mean, when we started out, I was not as tech savvy as anybody else. And, I was working with Mihil, who's an engineer and everything. So I asked him to bring printouts, which is really basic. And these were the Libre, outputs. And we literally wrote down every parameter, that happened in the day, whether it was food or whether it was, boluses or exercise or whatever. And then we tried to sort of get the data from this in terms of what was the TDD that he was taking, how it made a difference, how much of carbs he was eating. And we were really surprised that, when we put so much of information into a CGM graph, in terms of how much we were able to learn about his body and how it was responding. So, of course, he calculated his ISF, he calculated his IC ratio. He was able to fine tune it because, as you guys know, ISF and IC ratio are ballpark figures. I mean, you have a formula and then you have a ballpark figure, but what you definitely need to do is you need to fine tune it. So, I mean, we were able to do that by, following an exercise like this where we put in all the parameters and we saw how, typical food that he ate over and over again uniquely affected his body. And therefore, we were able to, get his unique numbers. So one way of, fine tuning your ISF or IC ratio is, of course, applying all the data that impacts you in a day to your particular, BG graphs. So that's my 2 cents. And this was a really fun exercise. I did it for myself and, Mihil and I did it together. And since then, Mihil has been helping, people in a much better, cleaner, with better, cleaner platforms. He's been helping lots of T1s to do that. Angad and Anirudh do that too, and Prashant does that too. So, this was fun. And thank you, Mihil, for sharing this.
Thanks, Sai, for actually making this thing happen, which helped us fix our sugars. So, okay. Now we're coming to a really important and a critical and interesting part, which is calibration. This is a video by Abbott, which I would like to play because this video would explain it much better than what I would. So here it is.
Most of the time, glucose levels in the ISF and the whole blood are similar. However, when the glucose is changing rapidly, such as after meals, after insulin, or after exercise, the glucose level in the whole blood is not the same as glucose in the ISF. This difference in the rate of change is known as the lag. A train is a good way to illustrate this concept of lag. Think of blood glucose and ISF glucose as the cars of a train. In the front car of the train is blood glucose, or BG. In the back of the train is the ISF, or sensor glucose, SG. Imagine that the hills and bumps on the track are like the changes in your glucose levels throughout a typical day. In the front car of the train is blood glucose, or BG. As carbohydrate is digested, glucose enters the bloodstream first before it is absorbed into the interstitial fluid. So blood glucose is in the front of the train. In the back of the train is the sensor glucose, or SG car. Since glucose travels from the blood into the interstitial fluid, sensor glucose follows behind blood glucose. When the train is traveling along a flat plane, when there is little fluctuation in glucose levels, the blood glucose and sensor glucose readings will be very similar, although rarely exactly the same. Now think of going uphill on the train as a rise or upward trend in glucose levels. As the train starts up the hill, you can see that the blood glucose in the front car is leading the sensor glucose in the back car, because changes in glucose appear first in blood glucose. Now, as the train heads down the hill, or glucose is decreasing or trending down, once again, the blood glucose leads in the front car. So, as you can see, whether glucose levels are trending up or trending down, blood glucose leads sensor glucose. There will be a bigger difference in blood glucose and sensor glucose readings on the bigger hills, or when glucose is changing more rapidly, after food, after insulin, and after exercise. There are a couple of important things to keep in mind. When glucose levels are generally stable, expect to see small differences in blood glucose and sensor glucose. However, when the glucose level is changing rapidly, expect to see bigger differences between the blood glucose and sensor glucose readings. It's important to note that with CGM, the focus is not only on the glucose reading at any single point in time, but also on the trend.
Mihir, you're on mute. You can unmute.
We had to mute you, Mihil, because we were getting an echo.
You still need to unmute yourself.
Done?
Yeah.
We
Am I
can hear
audible?
you. Yes,
Okay,
yes.
perfect. Any thoughts on this video? Any thoughts, any comments? Like, did you guys know this before? There is a difference in the timing because the sensor is measuring our glucose from the interstitial cells, basically, right? So calibration is really important because, and the time of calibration is also more important. Let's see how. And
Most of the time, glucose level.
Sorry. Okay, so can anyone tell me like when is a good time to calibrate? Like, is this kind of a graph a good time to calibrate our data, calibrate our sensor? Yes, no, like anyone? And why? Like all of us agree that that our sensor may have some kind of a difference of like 40 mgdl or 50 mgdl compared to our blood glucose that we may have like 40 or 50.
Mihil, sorry to interrupt, but when you are saying calibration, this is right now you are talking about Libre Pro and the app. Am I right? And the Glimp app.
I'm talking about the Libre Pro and the Glimp app. It can also be a Mayo and the Tomato app, or like you can just correlate like to a particular sensor which requires calibration. And if it does, basically a Libre Pro is a factory calibrated device. So if you're
Since
using
there
a
are
reader, you cannot calibrate it. If you're using a reader, then you cannot calibrate that device. So just a reader. So is this a good time to calibrate your sensor? Anyone? Like, what period do you feel is the best here? And why?
5 to 6.
Okay. 5 to 6, yeah. But again, like I was having a bad day here and only the 5 to 6 sugars were good. So I'd rather not calibrate here. In fact, I personally calibrate every morning, and I feel this is the perfect time when my blood glucose is relatively stable and there is not much difference between the actual blood glucose reading and my sensor data, and I'm flatlining. So that's when there are some sensors which like the Medtronic Guardian, which require at least 2 calibrations a day, right, Sai? So I think Sai is on the Medtronic Guardian. So that is
That's
the
right.
time.
That's right. It
Yeah.
requires a 2-time calibration.
Yeah, so I feel like your so when you're basically when your sugars are relatively stable, that's the best time, and high chance that will be in mornings. So yeah, so this is with respect to calibration of your sensors and apps. Okay, using statistics. Has anyone seen this page on your Glimp? Anyone? Yes, no? Guys, come on. Please respond.
Yeah, a lot of S's in the chat for you, Mihal.
Okay, awesome. So basically, I'll just quickly go through this. This is the percent between. This is the percentage of readings. I guess they are kept for like around 90 days, and then they ask you if we should delete data older than 90 days. So this is your data where this is the percentage of your time is spent above 180. This is the percentage of time is spent between 170 and 180. Your target over here is 70 to 170. Yeah. And yeah, you are like 6% in hypo. Yeah. So this statistic, right? So what I do is I follow this thumb rule where if I achieve a time in range of like 70%, I reduce this target. So I reduce it to 160 or 150, and that actually helps me and keeps me motivated to kind of maintain my blood glucose levels like in a tighter range. This can be different for different people. You can use it. All I'm saying is that this is how I use my statistics, and you can use it the way you want. Anything around this, any thoughts around this, comments around this, feel free. No? Okay. So questions and answers. We are done with all the slides, and yeah, shoot.
I think Parina has a question on standard deviation in the chat.
Oh, yeah. That's nice. So the mathematical definition of your standard deviation would be that there is an average, and what is your maximum and minimum from the average? Is that right, Angad?
Yeah. So basically, it's a measure of fluctuations, how much your data is fluctuating.
Yeah. So that is the standard deviation. I had read on a diatribe blog that a standard deviation of say 50 mgdl was favorable, but again, this is a very subjective thing. This is a very personal thing, just like your blood glucose targets. So yeah, you need to have this in mind. Yeah.
Okay, 1 second before you guys take the next question. I think a lot of it's already 12:30, so I think we took our time to get here. So I want to thank everybody who stayed back and who basically gave us their Saturday morning. So thank you so much. Quickly, guys, there is a link of T1DFI. Angad and I have shared a little feedback form link. So please take 2 seconds before you exit this meeting to fill up that feedback form and tell us what you thought so that we can do better. And we know that every time we come back to you with something, it is something that you want. So please do that, and thank you. I will give the DS back to Mihil in literally a minute. Prashant, are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so Prashant, can you quickly just tell everybody about the work that we do and how they can volunteer with us?
Yeah, I think most of them are aware of Type 1 Foundation of India. So this is driven by communities, not to any particular area of belonging to any particular group of people. So we just basically welcoming anyone and everyone who are willing to work for the Type 1 cause. So the door is open to literally everyone, T1 caregivers, doctors, professionals. So anybody who's willing to work for the cause, welcome. And you can also, if you have a particular project or in mind, then you can reach out to us. You can email us or get in touch with any of us directly. So it is called Driver Dream Project. So if you have any, it doesn't have to be small, big, or it can be anything that's related to T1. Because we are focusing more on projects and policy making. So, and if you want to join the team and want to volunteer, most welcome. So this team is doing a great job. I've seen Mihil, Angad, Anirudh, and Sai doing a lot of work over the time. So you can also come and join us. It is more fun, and you also get to learn a lot more. And yeah, so anything and everything about T1. You can join us and suggest and help and honest feedback. Sai has put out a link for the feedback. So if you give us a very honest feedback, we'll be able to correct ourselves and improve ourselves in the future and whatever. Because when we are talking about the first Night Scout project, people came out with they were suggesting looping. So I think Anirudh is working on that. So if you have any other suggestions or any topic to cover, please contact any of us.
Or put it in the feedback form, and we're happy to listen to you. So this platform is inclusive. This platform is powered by you. So if you have a dream, if you want to give back to the community in any way, just tell us what your idea is and we'll help you make it come true. So thank you so much. And back to Mihil, please, unmute yourselves and start asking your questions. If that's any, the speaker's all yours for the next 15-20 minutes.
Yeah.
I think we have a couple of hands raised. Piyush Kapoor, Jose. Yeah, so feel free to ask your questions, guys. Unmute yourself and.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Deepali. I have a 15-year-old son. Okay, he was diagnosed 5 years ago. Somebody mentioned a DiaBuddy project. I think Mihil or someone mentioned earlier. Can you throw some light on that? How it works?
I said that you contact your DiaBuddy. I didn't say the DiaBuddy project.
What is the DiaBuddy? How does it work?
A DiaBuddy. So Sai is my current DiaBuddy. We don't have a written contract, but she's my SOS who I contact whenever my sugars are messed up.
May I approach this?
May
I approach this?
Please do that.
With your consent. Okay, so Deepali, the DiaBuddy project is a brainchild of what we did at Club 1 KEM. Okay, we wanted to do this whole peer support thing because Club 1 KEM is a support group. So what a DiaBuddy is actually a colloquial term for two people with diabetes who are buddies or friends. Okay, so what we do is typically nobody in the family, is as equipped to, be as much in tune with each other's diabetic woes as our friends are. So what we did was, so all of us, like Neil and I are DiaBuddies, Anirudh, Angad, Prashant, they're all my DiaBuddies and I am theirs. So what we typically do is we just informally we access each other, we show each other, like मैंने इतना बोलस लिया, मैंने इतना खाया, मेरे ग्राफ्स ठीक नहीं हो रहे, तुम्हें क्या लगता है? The kind of thing. And we all crack our brains together. So in Club 1 KEM, we had actually come up with something called the DiaBuddy project, which is probably what you're familiar with, where we wanted more people to formally come and explore this, where, people actually commit to time and expertise in helping each other out. So that was a voluntary platform. Of course, what Neil was talking about was just what we do informally and off the record, where we just ping each other and say, yaar ye chal raha hai, what do you think? And we all do that on a day-to-day basis. And it's absolutely fantastic for morale because, what happens is if we all access each other and keep talking about our sugars, one is 3 brains are better than 1 or 2 brains are better than 1. And the second thing is that we all stay motivated for self-care instead of, just ignoring what's going on with us. So that's the piece on the DiaBuddy.
I think you got muted in between, but I got the general idea. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Piyush here. I was having some issues with my mic. Can I ask my question, please?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yes, Piyush, please go ahead. Piyush, please go ahead, Piyush.
Mihil, during your talk, you had said that there might be a probability. Yeah, in your talk, Mihil, you had said there might be a probability of basal not going at certain points in time due to some reasons. And I'm talking about the basal going through the pump. And you had mentioned that due to overcorrections in short durations, the basal delivery might get disturbed. Is this what you were trying to imply, that due to the overcorrections in a short duration of time, the basal pattern gets disturbed? And are there any other reasons that the basal could be disturbed besides this, if this is one of them? Thank you.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Okay. Sorry if I put it across as, like if you felt that it was put across as that, but what I meant is that because of so many corrections in a span of 36 hours, I kind of realized something was wrong, and all my fasting sugars were messed up, because of which I realized my basal was not going. Now my basal was not going because imagine if I just throw, like, if it's holy, okay, and if like a drop of water which I'm throwing every second does not get is not coming, okay. However, if I throw a bucket of water entirely on you, right, so you will actually succumb to it, right? So there was some blockage or something in the pump due to which those droplets of basal were not going, right? I don't know the exact details of what happened in that patch, like in that tube, but I'm assuming it was a tube or a side tissue which prevented my basal from going in, and it was nowhere related to the corrections or the amount of insulin I take on a daily basis. Is that clear?
Yeah. Yes, I understand, but I do think that there is a point here. But however, how much of those interruptions will actually have a bearing on the basal flow from the pump is the question. Maybe we can check with the pump guys, as in the company Medtronics, whether this might come into play.
Piyush, I'll actually give you the technical details of the pump. So I mean, like, you know, the 722 and 715, these two are, like, you know, the Medtronic paradigm versions of the pump. They can deliver 1.5 units in a minute. So, like, you know, let's assume your total dosage is more than, like, you know, 90 units in an hour. Then yeah, there can be delivery issues. But if your total dosage is like less than 9, I mean, I would definitely assume no one has that 90 units an hour for sure. So yeah, I mean, technically there is no possibility at all in the pump. Like, you know, if you have more boluses or more whatever it is, there cannot be any issues like in the delivery system.
Yeah, I thought so, but Mihil also had a point. Yes, theoretically it might have been possible. Thanks for clarifying that. Any other issues? Because I think this is pretty serious. If the basal doesn't get delivered, then, you know, everything is going to go haywire, because I have observed this in case of my daughter, who's 13 years and type 1 since about 7 years, that if the basal is not getting delivered due to any issue, whether the patch is you know, kinked, or whether, you know, there was not enough insulin left and she forgot to fill the reservoir, that has a long-term impact, as in that the sugars can take up to 24 hours or more to stabilize, even after giving corrections.
Yeah, sometimes it gets tricky, but yeah, I mean, you can always work it out, I would say, Piyush. I mean, yeah, once you are kind of like, you know, out of target, and it will always be M's and W's, like, you know, you will be going up and down like for quite a while. But yeah, I mean, it just comes with practice, I would say.
True. Thank you.
One small doubt.
Yes, Mohan, please tell me.
When I give the Lantus through the shots, it will work perfectly. When I change it into NovaRapid in the pump, it always spikes according to the given direction by the doctor only. So it always reaches to 500, 600. I have checked it 2 times, 3 times. So why it happens, I don't know.
That's kind of strange, Mohan. Like, I mean, they should actually, like, I mean, be literally the same, really speaking. I mean, for me, I would say my case actually. So my total daily dosage had quite a significantly reduced when I migrated to pump. Like, you know, almost 20% of my, like, you know, let's assume I was taking 30 units of basal before pump, like when I was on MDI. So when I came on to pump, my basal has been like, you know, 25 units or something of that sort. So it's just, I mean, again, my experience, maybe I was like my injecting techniques were wrong when I was on MDI or something. So, but yeah, I mean, I would see like very less chances that a pump can not work.
No, I'm not
as
saying it's
Lantus.
not working. Actually,
The
when
basal.
basil, only I have the problem with the basil. I'm not having the problem with this correction units and for food and all what we are taking. That is going good. But
Okay.
only for the long acting, it is not working properly. Maybe because of the adjustment. That is because of the maybe that is one of the reason what I'm thinking.
Yeah, you need to just give a trial and error by increasing slightly a bit, and like again, talk to your doctor. I would say if there is a like big variations needed.
Okay, because if the pump is not working, means when we take for the bolus, that also should not be worked.
Yeah.
So if it is working, means basal also should be worked.
True. Very true. Very true.
So when it comes to bolus, it is working fine, superb, exceptionally superb. But in
Okay.
case of basal, it is not working properly.
Again, yeah, can't comment. I would say, I don't know what is happening.
Okay, thank
It
you.
could be a dose issue also. I mean, it could be a dose issue also. So it's best that you consult your doctor, because typically if your basal is lower also, that can throw your management off the whack. But I guess we are speculating because we don't have all the data points to know this. But you definitely sound like you have something for discussion with your doctor. It could be a dose issue as well.
Thank you, sir.
So hi guys, Samuel this side. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, Samuel, please go ahead.
So this question is for everyone who uses the Freestyle Libre Pro. I used the device for around 2 years, and I've stopped using it now. I was using it probably around the years 2016 to 18 or 17 to 19, something like that. But one challenge which I faced was we all spend a lot of money buying these incredibly expensive devices, and the sensors, I particularly mean the sensors, and they end up malfunctioning after a period of, let's say, 7 days, 3 days, or maybe in some cases 11th day. And I stopped using them. So I just wanted your experience about that, the malfunctioning of the sensors. How often have you guys experienced that?
A lot of time, Sam. Actually, I think most T1s, there has been discussion across India in various cities, especially with the April 2021 expiry date batch. Like everybody had a tough time. But then the company policy is like, if it is less than 3 days, they replace, but otherwise, like, we are left on our own. So I think the sensors, the new batches which are coming are like functioning a lot more better. So in the beginning, maybe their logistics or their storage or something went wrong. We all tried to talk to the company, wrote letters, and had personal meetings as well in my city at least. But nothing worked. But for the last 4-5 months, I think things are getting a little better. So, and one more thing is, like, we don't have any other option because Libre Pro is the most economical, and I mean, in spite of it being very expensive and we having to spend a lot of money on it, it's still the most economical option that we have. So unless we all maybe, I don't know how, but make more effort collectively and then address our issue to the company, and then make them work a little more better and deliver more quality products.
Yeah, because initially I remember when I was advised this device by my practitioner, the doctor, they told me that when this device came out, it was not meant for the general public. It was meant for the doctors, right? It was that was the idea. I don't know how the situation is now. Is it meant for the general public now, or is it still?
No, it is Libre Pro is still meant to be for doctors, but yeah, in India, like, we have all this jugaad which happens and we can buy it for cheaper prices. And there is a patient version as well, though, Libre, which is quite expensive compared to Libre Pro.
that is 5,000, right? I mean, I live in Delhi. Those are the prices I know. 5,000 for
It is.
and around 2,000.
So yeah, I mean, see, end of the day, it again boils up to the affordability, right? Like, we all use Libre Pro as well. When you have a cheaper version, which is almost doing the same work for you, then yeah.
But regarding Samuel, regarding that malfunctioning of the sensors, that probably also has to do with the specific phone model you're using. If you're using the
I
Glimp,
don't use, so I've never used Glimp. Unfortunately, I haven't, I don't know if it's fortunate or unfortunate. I've always used the reader. And now,
okay.
after talking with probably Harsh, who I think quite a few might be aware from
Yeah,
DIA,
Harsh.
so he is fairly knowledgeable about the availability of all these devices and all of
Yeah.
that. He told me that
Yeah.
in Delhi, at least, it's not available. I mean, the reader is not available
The
anymore.
reader is not available. Yeah. But I mean, personally, I haven't had any like failed sensors in the past 1 year, hardly 1 or 2. But the good thing
Okay.
is, like, if a sensor fails before 3 days, you can get it exchanged.
No, but I'm going to be in agreement with Samuel because, I mean, irrespective of the phone model, I've also had a fair share of sensors breaking. But
Yeah.
like Angad says, if it happens within the first few days, then, Abbott usually replaces it instantly.
I mean, your agent, the person from whom you're buying, is he responsible for that, or is it more like on good terms? Let's say he feels like, okay, he feels that, yeah, 3 days is too less, so I replace it for you. But otherwise, he's
No,
not.
it is
Really depends,
Sam.
because in Mumbai
Yeah.
and Pune, the service is pretty decent
Mhm.
for the
Okay.
most
But
part.
then,
Even pretty much
yeah,
all
but
the
then,
cities I would feel. I
Yeah.
think.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think the standard company policy is 3 days, less than 3 days. So even if it is the fourth day, some people don't do it. I mean, most of them don't do it. So 7 days is out of the question. It is.
But the
Our
general
loss.
consensus amongst you guys is that now they have become better, right? So the
Yes,
sensors.
sensor, yeah.
All right,
At
all
least,
right.
yeah, better.
That sounds good. Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks a lot.
And Sam, I think you must start using Glimp on a phone, except 70 and 70 Pro OnePlus. The other phones are like kind of okay, because with Glimp now, just what the session by Mihil was, you get to learn a lot more statistics. You can intervene much faster and learn more about your lunch, breakfast, and all your time in range and everything. So Glimp
I need
is
NFC for that,
game
if
changer.
I'm not wrong.
Yes,
That's
yes.
true.
So there are two options to that. Like either people change most T1s buy a NFC Android phone, and if you're not willing to change, then you can go for a used a phone which has NFC, which works to around 2,000 to 5 or within 3,000
Yeah.
rupees. You get an old phone, so you can use it as a standalone reader, even if it has some other issues. If the NFC is working well. And even parents do that for their kids. They just give that phone, the used phone, to their kids and send them to the school with that phone, and that works better for them.
Also about, on the topic of meeting. So I personally haven't met any of you guys. I've interacted with a few of you on virtual platforms, but it would be love to. I mean, of course, we are in the Corona situation, but probably once the situation hopefully subsides in due course of time, are there any plans of any meeting or any event or something?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah,
As
we
soon
we
as
had one
the
big
world
event
is,
here
yeah.
in Bangalore. We had one big event here in Bangalore last March, just before the COVID. So yeah, that was when T20FI launched. It was like more than 300 people had come over, and yeah, it was like mega
Yeah.
event. But yeah,
When
again,
did that happen?
India, yeah.
March 2019.
Just before the
2020.
crisis hit.
Yeah,
Wow, very
exactly.
nice.
Yeah,
We used to be pandemic.
yeah.
The foundation is a pandemic baby.
Right.
We were launched, which is also why you see a lot more online activity now, because it's not safe to travel to each other. But in the background, we are doing a lot of representation. We're having policy work happening, and there's a lot more coming that we should be in a space to share with, where we're trying to make change. But this whole tech piece is because we have so many techies sitting in our working group. We have Angad, we have Anirudh, we have Nihil, and we thought it would be a shame if these guys wouldn't give back and share what they're so good at, obviously.
Perfect. Lovely. Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks.
And I think to the others also, we want to say that
Prashant, your voice is breaking.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just got a call in between. Sorry. Yeah, so we are actually trying to connect T1s across India, so that we are also coming up with a community finder, so that we can connect T1s even when they're traveling somewhere or going to other cities. They can interact either offline or online when things get better. So, as they say, the Dia buddies and T1 buddies, connecting and interaction with them is more important. So everybody has a group in different local
Cities.
areas. So this is basically about connecting everyone with other cities as well.
Sounds great. Sounds great. I mean, I'm really up for the community engagement and the interaction part for part.
No, we'd love to. And listen, Samuel, I mean, I'd speak for all of us when I say we're a really friendly bunch. Okay.
I know that.
If you're in any of our cities and you DM poison of choice, coffee, whatever else, harder, softer, people are happy to catch up and chat. So I mean, just DM any of us on any of our social media handles, and then the next thing you know, there's a plan in the brewing when the world is safer. So
Sounds great. Sounds great.
Hi, I have a question. Can I?
Sure, please.
Yes, Madan, please go ahead.
Hi. It's regarding this new devices, ones which convert the normal sensor into a CGM. Things like Knight Rider and Mia. I'm thinking about trying it, but this lady who calls me from the Knight Rider, she claims that it extends the sensor's lifetime. We have to reset before the 14 days. I'm not sure if the other one, the Mia, also does that. Does it practically help us? Does it really work after the 14 days?
Unfortunately, no other readers, no other transmitters do help in that except the Bluecon Knight Rider. So again, like, there are advantages, disadvantages with every of these transmitters, I would say. Like, 2 odd years ago, I was using the Bluecon Knight Rider, and then I migrated to Mayo. But yeah, I personally do not care about the sensor life extension at the moment, is because, like, first thing, I am able to afford the sensor, and second thing, I have skin allergies, like, which I could name, like, if I have my sensor for 14 days itself, like, my skin gets peeled off and all these things. And I cannot even assume, like, having it for more than 14 days, or like, I mean, yeah, some
No,
people
listen,
do.
I agree with Anirudh, because there are health concerns to wearing a foreign object in your body for over 14 days. And see, apart from, of course, allergies and stuff, I've also noticed from my own personal experience, because I have the Medtronic, and there's this little hack where you can take it out and recharge it and keep on cheating the sensor. So I'm not proud to admit that, but in the spirit of curiosity, I extended my sensor once for an entire month. But that the site got sick, the accuracy dropped, because I guess there is some science to it. There is some enzymes around your interstitial fluid, that sort of react with the element in the sensor, and it transmits the readings. Those get weaker, those get inaccurate. So typically, if you can afford it, it's just healthy to stay with, like, your 14-day prescribed time. It works in its best capacity, in that window.
And again, like, I personally had like quite a lot of issues with the Bluecon Knight Rider as well. So that's the reason, like, I just got stuck to Mayo. Mayo was like, getting it, I had few issues, but once I got it, it has been great for me. And even, like, I think Angad uses the same, Mihil uses the same. Yeah, we have quite a bunch of people who are using.
So Ani, just to get the technical answer. So is it technically possible to extend the 14 days to how many days?
You can extend with the Bluecon Knight Rider. And I mean, again, see, it can be extended for the next 14 days, as far as I know. But again, like, the accuracy starts falling down slowly, because, like, the place where you inserted your sensor would be injured, right? It would be injured, and like, like the blood flow will not be as appropriate as before. So
okay. So one more thing I forgot to ask. Whatever is explained right now, it's an eye opener for me. Yes, it is giving rashes, so I would not go for extending it. But the activation part, since getting the reader is a hurdle, right?
Yeah, again,
nowadays.
like, yeah, activation as well. Only Bluecon Knight Rider can do it. No other can do it. So yeah, again, see, you need to, end of the day, like, balance your things, what you want. So if you are really like worried about the activation, then yeah, maybe Bluecon Knight Rider is the best option for you. But yeah, I mean, if you can manage your activation from someone else who is living in your neighborhood, if it is easy for you, then yeah, I mean, I would personally recommend Mayo, because it has been my best go-to device.
Okay, Mayo also activates, is it?
No, Mayo cannot activate. It can only read the data.
Okay.
Most WhatsApp groups you're a part of, which is in your local city or town or whatever, if you put out a message saying, hi, who has a reader? I want to come and activate. Oh, there'll be at least 3 people who say, hey, I have a reader. And then you can just figure out where they live and go over and get it activated. I understand that that's a hassle, but reader pooling is a very common practice. Like we do it in Pune, we do it in Mumbai. So it's a very common practice. I'm sure it happens in Bangalore as well, in Chennai.
Yeah, it does.
I mean, coming back to this topic of unavailability of readers, Prashant, I think like as you mentioned, you were like you guys or you especially had a communication with the company officials or something, right? Like, so why are they not producing it? Any idea on that?
Producing, okay.
See,
the simple answer is they want to sell the expensive one.
Yeah.
So there's also another angle to it. If you realize, the Libre Pro is not a product that was built for the end user. Okay. The Libre Pro is a product built for a doctor. Now your doctor to patient ratio is what? One doctor covers 2,000 patients? So why would they make 2,000 readers? They would make 50 readers or 100 readers for a particular geography. It's illegal to typically sell a Libre Pro to. The understanding or the expectation is that the patient will go to your doctor and get your sensor activated.
I mean, yeah, that makes sense.
And also, I think because of the price, it has been like a trial, just like they give trial medicine. So when your doctor is trying to titrate or fix the dosage for a patient, so they're going to use one sensor for a patient only once, like maybe in a couple of years. So they just put that sensor and then send them off. It's not for regular repeated use. So that is why the patient use version comes next with the higher price.
Right.
I think, Sai, maybe it's time to wrap the call. We have
Pari
Karina
has a question. Pari, hi. What do you want to ask?
Hi, Sai.
Hi.
Hi. Since you all were talking about sensors, I just wanted to add a few things because I had a talk with the guy who supplies sensors to us over here in Hyderabad and elsewhere also. I spoke with him about the sensors going bad. Mostly what he has observed as a distributor is that it happens mostly with people who use it with GLIMP. And what he feels is because GLIMP has kept updating its software that has
But Pari, you could not. I could not hear the part where you said mostly it's been happening because
because of the people who use it with the GLIMP app.
Actually, that is the ploy or the excuse the Abbott guy gives. But as Sam said, like he has never used GLIMP, he has only used the reader.
Rightly said.
I got that.
So even here, people with just readers, they had the same issues. So it was a problem with the sensor. Actually, the guy who talked to me in Chennai, he said like, who's applying? Like you're not professionals, you're not applying it properly. We've been applying sensors for the last 3 years. So that is, close to 40 to 50 sensors I have applied. Only during that particular batch, it just went bad. Just not one. Almost 70% of the batch just went bad, but they put the blame on GLIMP and ourselves. So it's the company's way of.
I'm not denying that. They are probably washing their hands clean of it very easily. But what I'm trying to say is now that they've come out with Libre, they are not going to be interested in the sales of Libre Pro or even probably the faulty one. So even if you approach them, yes, they will replace it within 3 days. However, they're not going to be they're not going to go out of their way to serve you because they're more interested in sales of Libre now than in the sales of Libre Pro. So that's the thing.
Right, that's true. And but again, not to leave the meeting in such a negative note, my only 2 cents is that, service has improved when more of us have started using it and we started forming a stronger voice, right? Like a few years ago when there were only like 10 or 15 or 20 people in a patient community who were like, bending backwards to get their hands on a Libre. Pro, a Libre Pro, as opposed to now where hundreds of people in every city on a monthly basis are buying Libre Pro like they're buying insulin. So, I think when more people started using this product, I feel like the companies have gotten more responsive, and groups are forming, like, a lot of groups are sourcing their products together. Like in Chennai, I know for a fact that Prashant's group does that. I know Angadani and all do that in Bangalore, right, where they buy it as a group. So therefore, after service is also improved. So I think the strength is in numbers. The strength is in us speaking in one voice as a community. And I'm not romanticizing it by a mile. We have a lot of distance to cover for medical devices to be cheaper and more accurate and more accessible to all of us. But I feel that we are definitely in a better place today than we were even 2 years ago. Okay, so on that happy note, I'm wondering if we should call it a wrap because it's 1 o'clock and you guys have been with us since 11. I'm going to just quickly ask you to look at the chat. There is a feedback form and Angad will once again paste all our social media handles. Please follow us, please talk to us, please participate with us. But more importantly, this is your foundation. This is an inclusive platform. This is not a group or a community of any sort or a support group. This is a platform for people like you and me and everybody else. If you have an idea that you want to make a change for people like us, for persons living with diabetes, in any way, we are listening. We'll drive this dream together. The foundation is you and us. So please reach out to us. A huge shout out to the hero of the day, Mihir Ramaya, for giving us his time and his jokes and his quirks and this awesome presentation. It was really great having you with us. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend and join us again. Thank you.
So, thank you guys. Thank you so much. Just wanted to thank you.